Hey everybody, this is Mrs. Dietz. Because I'm out of the office Thursday and Friday of this week, we don't have our regularly scheduled weekly Class Connect. But I did want to touch base with you guys really quickly and kind of go over some of the main concepts that we would have gone over had we had a Class Connect. It's especially important this week because you guys started a new unit on theme and characterization. So I'm going to use the PowerPoint that I had prepared for class today, and I'm just going to highlight some of those important kind of key aspects that we would have gone over had we had a Class Connect. The big ideas that we're focusing on in Unit 2 are theme and characterization. Our goals are to define direct and indirect characterization, define protagonist and antagonist, and then define and kind of analyze how characters develop over time. Hopefully after you watch this you'll leave with a deeper understanding of characterization and theme and feel like you can analyze both on your own, because that's what you'll be doing for Unit 2. So first we're going to start with characterization. So characterization is the term for the combination of techniques an author uses to reveal traits. Characterization reveals traits both directly and indirectly. And you can learn a lot about a character through their actions. So that's one way that an author uses characterization. You can learn a lot about a character through other characters and their responses to your particular character that you're analyzing. So you can learn a lot through their reactions to that character, through the dialogue that they have with that character. You can also learn a lot about a character through their thoughts, especially if you have a text written in first person point of view. You get to hear the character's thoughts all throughout the text, and that reveals quite a bit about a character. You can also learn a lot about a character through description. Usually the narrator spends a good chunk of time describing the characters. And then lastly, you can use a lot about a character just through dialogue and the things that he or she says to another character and the conversations that they take part in. So all of these here are ways that an author uses characterization to develop a character. There are two types of characterization that we're going to focus on in Unit 2. There's direct characterization, and then there's indirect characterization. Direct characterization is a little bit easier. Direct characterization is when the writer makes direct statements about a character's personality and tells what the character is like. So think adjectives and descriptions. So direct characterization is when the narrator tells you exactly what to think of the character. Indirect characterization, on the other hand, is a little bit trickier. With indirect characterization, the writer reveals info about a character and his or her personality through the character's thoughts, words, and actions, along with how other characters respond to that character, including what they think and say about him or her. So when it comes to indirect characterization, think verbs and actions. When an author uses indirect characterization, they give you clues about the character. And you have to use those clues to make inferences about who that character is and how their actions define them. In indirect characterization, the writer tells you directly what the character is like. And here's an example. It says, Betsy was a determined 3-year-old who knew what she wanted and often got her way if she cried loudly enough. So here the narrator is telling us that Betsy always gets her way, especially if she cries loud enough. She's very determined, and she's 3 years old. So we learn all of that directly from the text because it's directly stated. Again, indirect characterization, on the other hand, uses the character's speech, thoughts, actions, etc. to help you make an inference about the character. And one way that you can do that is to use a STEAL method. So when you're analyzing a character, you can kind of think of this acronym STEAL and analyze all of these key parts. So take a look at the character's speech. What does the character say? How does the character speak? That can tell you a lot about a character. Analyze their thoughts. What is revealed through the character's private thoughts and feelings? Next, analyze their effect on others. So how do others feel about the character? What is revealed through the character's effect on other people? How do other characters feel or behave in reaction to the character? Then take a close look at actions. So what does the character do? How does the character behave? And then lastly, take a look at their looks. What does the character look like? How does the character dress? And sometimes this is direct characterization because the author comes out and tells you very specific things about a character. You know, maybe they have red hair and freckles. On the other hand, if they're describing a character, and maybe they're describing their clothing, maybe they're saying, you know, they walked up in a scuba diving suit and a snorkel, you can use that information then to make an inference that they were out in the water or that they were snorkeling, or, you know, maybe they're a deep sea diver, although they probably have a little bit more gear on if that was the case. But sometimes those physical descriptions of what they're wearing help you infer other things about the character that go a little bit deeper than just their physical look. In addition to the two types of characterization, there are many types of characters in a text, and we're going to go into depth on each of these in the online lessons over the course of the next week. But just to run through them really quickly, we have the protagonist, and the protagonist is the main character of the story, so you always have a protagonist, and most likely this term sounds familiar to you. We also have an antagonist, and the antagonist is oftentimes the bad guy. So this is the character who opposes the main character, who works against them. You also have flat characters in text. And if you look right here, flat character matches up to D on this end. And a flat character is a character with few character traits. The reader only knows one side of the character, so they're very flat. We only get to know one part of them. On the other hand, you have a round character. A round character is a character with many traits. The reader gets to know multiple sides of that character. We also have a dynamic character. And a dynamic character is a character who goes through a large change over the course of a story or a book. So characters that really undergo a big change are dynamic. And usually our protagonist, our main character, is also a dynamic character. And then lastly, we have the opposite. We have a static character. And a static character is one that stays the same throughout the course of a story or a book. So the character that doesn't change, doesn't learn anything, is a static character. Woohoo! Okay, we've gone through most of the info from today's PowerPoint, but I do have a couple other things that I want to touch on with you guys. And one of those is theme. So the other thing we're looking closely at this year is theme. Theme in literature is the main message that an author wants to communicate to the readers. A theme is not the same as a topic of a story, and oftentimes that gets confused. The topic of a story is its subject. It's what the story is about. The theme, on the other hand, is what the author wants the reader to understand about the topic. So it's the lesson that the author wants you to learn, or the message the author wants you to learn. To identify the theme, you can ask yourself these two questions. What topic or subject is the text about? And then what does the author want me to think about that topic or subject? So what does the author want me to learn? Remember, a story's theme cannot be described in a single word. So for example, the word revenge wouldn't be considered the theme. That would be the topic. However, the statement, revenge is not the same thing as justice, could be considered the theme. So that's the major difference. The subject can be summed up in one word, like revenge, whereas the theme is the author's message, so it needs to be a statement. So for example, we could take that topic of revenge, we could turn it into this theme here. Revenge is not the same thing as justice. All literary works have both a topic and a theme, so they're both in there. And like I said, oftentimes these are confused, but they do have distinct meanings. And again, the topic is the subject of the written text. So another example would be friendship. That would make a great topic for an essay or for a narrative or a story. If we had a story about friendship, the story may tell the tale of two young men who've been friends since childhood. The theme, on the other hand, though, is the main message that an author wants to communicate to the reader. So in that same story, the plot might describe how one of the young men passes up a chance to earn $1 million because he has to help his old friend. And this might be the theme of the story. Friendship can come at a high price. So topic can be summed up in one sentence. Topic can be summed up in one word. Theme is summed up in one statement or sentence that explains what the narrator learned and what the reader should learn about the text. So there is a big difference between those two. And just to go in a little bit deeper, here are another few examples for you. I'm kind of skip around here, but right here it says the topic of the story could be bravery, so the bravery of soldiers in battle, whereas the theme would be courage is a conscious choice. Another theme might be, a young woman is inspired by her mother's optimism. So, I'm sorry, that would be the topic. Whereas the theme would be this statement over here, hope is learned. And then lastly, one last example of a topic might be a couple with a tumultuous relationships. The topic might be, a couple who are in a really bad relationship that's kind of dysfunctional. And then the theme would be the message over here. Love can be destructive. So you can definitely take the topic of a text and think about it and trying to determine, what the message of the story is through identifying the topic first. But theme, message, topic, subject. Okay, I think that we covered all of the main points for this week's Class Connect. I want you to make sure that you leave this recording knowing what theme is and then knowing what characterization is. And if you're a little bit iffy or confused, you can go ahead and watch this again. The video is not too long. Before I let you guys go, though, I want to take a look at what's next. Make sure that you're continuing to work on the lessons assigned on the class plan as well as the assigned reading. Remember that if you don't have a hard copy textbook, that's okay. You do have the online textbook, and that is located underneath content in course materials. It's about the 4th or the 5th item down, but you should see the digital copy of our textbook. So if you don't have the physical copy of it, you do have the digital copy you can read right off of your computer screen. So there's no reason to not be completing the reading. In addition, you want to take the 2.04 quiz today, Friday, and you want to take this up to, or you can take this up to 3 times. And so feel free to take it up to 3 times. The computer will take your highest score. So if you do poorly that first time, make sure that you go back in and see what you got wrong, and then retake the quiz for a higher score and for a deeper understanding. And then you do have Class Connect today if you're in the Focus Class Connect. I am still out of the office. I just wanted to hop on this morning and make sure that I made this video for you guys and posted it. But I will be gone today as well, Friday, especially in the morning. I think I'll probably be back by this afternoon, so I'll be able to check emails and do some grading. But Mrs. Oliver will run that Friday Class Connect at 11 a.m. So if you are in the Focus Class Connect group, you should still see that on your Class Connect schedule, and you do have Class Connect today. If you're not in that Focus Class Connect group, I will see you guys all next Thursday. And then, of course, you can feel free to contact me with any questions that you have, or, give me a call or email me. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have a great Friday and a great rest of the week. I hope that you guys enjoy your weekend. Okay, see you guys later.